Today's read aloud is Food Webs by Lisa Greathouse. The pictures are by Lisa Perlman Greathouse. I think it's the same person. This is a level N book, which is why I'm reading it to you, because a level N is a beginning of third grade reading level. This is our table of contents. If it's alive, it needs energy. Is it lunchtime yet? By the time the lunch bell rings, you are probably hungry. That's because your body needs energy to get through the day. The energy you get from the food you eat helps you run at recess. It helps you focus while you're doing homework. It helps you fight off the flu and other illnesses. The energy from the food you eat even keeps your heart beating and your blood pumping. In other words, you couldn't live without energy from food. The same is true for all animals living on Earth. All living plants and animals need energy to live. Plants get their energy from air, soil, water, and the sun. Animals get their energy by eating plants and other animals, because some animals only eat plants, some animals eat plants and animals. That flow of energy from one living thing to another is called a food chain. A food chain branches out to many animals. As it grows, it starts to look like a web, a food web. So the words food chain and food web are used interchangeably. They mean the same. And here you see a food web that starts with the sun, and it feeds the plant. The plant feeds the grasshopper. The grasshopper can feed a rat, but it can also feed a hawk. The rat can feed a hawk, and it can feed a snake, and a snake can feed a hawk as well. This is a transfer of energy, or passing energy from one living thing to another. Food webs show how animals get energy from other organisms. They show who eats who. They are a simple way to understand a complex process. When something is complex, it's difficult. It may be difficult to see how a plant in one place gives energy to an animal far away, but a food web can show how they connect. There are many types of food webs. They vary based on the part of the world you are in. You wouldn't see an African lion or a polar bear in an American food web, except at the zoo. A food web from Greece might have olives, goats, and bears in it. A food web from China might have grass, birds, and alligators. Wherever they are from, food webs show how species relate. And this is like how they're the same and how they're different. This is an Arctic food chain and a North American food chain. Plants are producers. All food webs start with the sun. The sun provides plants with the energy they need to grow, and plants provide energy to billions of animals around the world. Plants use air, sunlight, and water and soil to make their own food. That's why plants are known as producers in a food web. There are a lot of things in a food web, but plants are some of the only creatures that directly use the sun's energy to make their own food. They're producers because they produce their own food. They make their own food. Animals are consumers. Animals that eat plants are the next link in the food web. They use energy from plants to grow and live. Animals that eat only plants are called herbivores. In a food web, they are called primary consumers. Primary consumers can be small animals. Insects or rabbits are primary consumers. But there are also large herbivores. These include giraffes, elephants, and bison. Most primary consumers are small animals that are eaten by larger animals. When a cricket eats a leaf, it is a primary consumer. Then along comes something bigger, such as a mouse, which eats the cricket. That mouse is a secondary consumer. The energy the cricket gets from the plant moves to the mouse. A tertiary consumer, perhaps a bird, may then eat the secondary consumer. The energy goes from the sun to the plants, then it moves from one animal to the next. Consumer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. Do you eat meat? No. You're a herbivore. You eat only plants. Do you eat meat? Yes. Do you eat anything else? No. You're a carnivore. You only eat animals. But if you eat meat and you eat other things, you are an omnivore. You eat both plants and animals. Decomposers do the dirty work. What happens when a powerful animal eats another animal? Is that the end of the food chain? Not by a long shot. At some point, that animal is going to die. That's when scavengers and decomposers start their work. Have you ever seen a dead animal in the road? You might see birds or other small animals eating it. When an animal dies, it's eaten by other animals. These animals are known as scavengers. Then it's time for decomposers to spring into action. Bacteria, mushrooms, and worms are examples of decomposers. They break down the nutrients that are left in dead plants and animals. They return them to the soil. These nutrients become food for plants to use, and the food chain begins again, kind of like a life cycle. Weaving the web. Plants and animals rely on one another to live. In an ecosystem, each living thing is part of many different food chains. The food chains crisscross and overlap. When you look at all the connected food chains, you end up with something that looks more like a web than a chain. One light touch can set a whole spider web shaking. Food webs work the same way. A small change in one area of the web can change the whole ecosystem. Food webs show how each plant and animal is important, and that's why we need to take care of an environment, because if an animal or a plant ever becomes extinct, it will affect the ecosystem and the environment. What will happen if one living thing becomes endangered? Think of it as a woven blanket. If you pull out just one thread, the whole blanket can unravel, can come apart. It is the same thing with an ecosystem. The loss of just one species can unravel the whole thing. Long ago, hundreds of thousands of wolves roamed the United States. They hunted elk, deer, and moose. The wolves kept the numbers of those animals under control. But wolves became a threat, and humans began hunting them. Before long, wolves became an endangered species. With the wolves almost gone, the number of elk was out of control. That meant the willow trees the elk grazed on were now in short supply. Fewer trees meant there was no food or shelter for songbirds. Songbirds eat mosquitoes, but with the birds dying, the number of mosquitoes began growing, and nobody wanted that. This is what it looked like before the wolves roamed free, and there were lots of them. There were lots of grasslands, few elk, and lots of shade. And then the grasslands dried out, and the elk ate a lot of the leaves from the trees.
Elk.
Most endangered species aren't as regal as the wolf or the saber-toothed cat, but they're just as important. The freshwater mussel is not much to look at, but it plays a key role in its ecosystem. It lives in North America, lakes, and rivers. The mussel is a food source for many kinds of life. Raccoons, otters, and herons are a few of the animals that eat them. Mussels also clean the water they live in. They make the ecosystem better for other species of fish, bugs, and worms that live there. But the mussel is in trouble. Most of the 300 species of mussels are threatened. Experts think pollution is killing them. Toxins in the runoff from farms and cities are getting into the water they live in. This puts the entire ecosystem in danger. New species of plants and animals are being discovered all the time, so experts aren't sure exactly how many there are. But they estimate that between 200 and 100,000 species become extinct every year. Oh my goodness, that is a lot. That is very sad. Rewilding. Some scientists argue that we can restore ecosystems if we make space for them. They look for land that is not being used, then they bring in key species. They try to undo some of the damage that has been done. In time, these areas can become wild again. This practice is called rewilding. The loss of wolves in an ecosystem can be devastating. Their reintroduction during rewildering can turn an ecosystem around. In 1995, 41 wolves were reintroduced into Yellowstone National Park. Their presence changed the ecosystem. Soon, there were less deer in the park. That allowed more plants to grow. Birds and beavers began to return. Ducks, frogs, and more fish followed. The wolves ate the coyotes. That meant more rabbits and mice would survive, and that provided more food for eagles and hawks. The park became a richer, more alive place, just because they added 41 wolves. Where do you fit in? So where do you fit in to the food web? Some people think the humans are at the top of the food chain. That is because nothing hunts humans, but that's only true today. Long ago, humans were hunted by large predators. Experts say we are close to the middle of the food chain. This is because we eat a mix of plants and animals. Only carnivores are considered to be at the top of the food chain. They don't have any predators. Whales, tigers, and polar bears are at the top. But humans can play another role too. There are many things humans do that can harm the delicate balance of food webs. For instance, farmers kill bugs that eat their crops, but those bugs may be the main food source for a type of bird. If the bird doesn't have that bug to eat, that species of birds may start dying. It may even become extinct. The animals that rely on that bird for food may be threatened too. The loss of one type of bug can disrupt the balance of an entire food web. The same thing can happen when humans hunt or fish too many of one animal. We can disrupt the food web. And I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to show you that this is a book actually that I got from Epic, and there's lots of other things on here that you can read and explore on your own. If you want to find this book on Get Epic, you are going to type in food webs and the book is going to come up. I hope you enjoyed it.